Good evening. How's everybody?
Hey, Ethan. How are
Not bad for a Tuesday. What to do?
Good afternoon, Stephanie. Good afternoon, Travis, Myrna. Glad to see you in.
Hello.
It's John Marler. Now, Tim should be in. Is Tim in? No. Brian, how are you, Brian?
Mr. Marlar, it looks like you're in the lake somewhere.
That's the Sea of Galilee behind me.
Oh. Wow.
Now, is everybody going to wear their virtual mask?
I did have somebody the other day give me a virtual mustache.
Oh, yeah, there's mustaches and berets and everything.
Mhm.
I've had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
Travis. So we have our quorum. Myrna, is there anyone that hasn't shown up yet? That you responded that they were going to be here?
No.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Deb Meyer.
Oh, Doug Meyer?
I also do not see the applicant on the line yet. Let me give him a few minutes.
Deborah Meyer is. It was said that she would be here, but she's not yet. Well, it's 5 o'clock. We've got quorum. We might as well go ahead and start the meeting. And let's see here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do not see the applicant on the line yet.
Oh, he is.
Either.
Is Brian Portigo the applicant or representing the applicant?
No, sir. I'm just watching the proceedings.
Ah, glad to see you, Brian. Go ahead and turn your camera on so we can.
Okay, I will. I was talking on the phone. Sorry about that. No problem.
No, you're just coming in to be a visitor, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:01 p.m. we have quorum. I show myself, Travis, Kayla, and Stephanie online as members. And I see other staff members here being here. So I think we're ready to roll. And we only have the one item, but legislative general agenda, approval of the minutes from the August 18th, 2020. What? Oh, Ed just checked in. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, finally got it to work.
Okay, so we've got more than quorum. Okay, so we're item B. Item A, no one's at this point is posted to speak to the board. Regular legislative agenda is to consider the minutes of the last meeting, August 18, 2020. I saw no errors. Did anyone see any errors?
Chair,
yeah.
please excuse me, but can we have Myrna take the roll for the official record? I don't think I heard her call the official roll call.
Okay, well, I read it. I said that John, I was here, Travis, Kayla, Stephanie, and now Ed Whitmore is here. Do you need anything other than that?
I do think it's important to note the exact members that are absent from the meeting for the record.
Okay, we'll note that Tim Haney, I saw him this morning. So Tim Haney is not present. And Deb Meyer is not present at this moment. If we see him come in, I guess that would do it. But is that, I thought that would be sufficient. I can quote the absent members now. So we've got a complete roll call. Is there anything other than that?
It was just making sure we had a complete roll call, sir,
Okay.
and noting the absences as well.
Okay, anyone on the board want to say any comments about the minutes of last meeting? I found no error. If anyone did, it probably might be Kayla. Kayla, do you have any comment?
I do not. Thank you.
You want to make a motion?
That would be great. I move the minutes of the meeting of, oh gosh, August, whatever it was. I don't have the agenda.
Kayla's made the motion. Anyone want to?
May be approved.
I'll second it.
Who's you? Identify yourself by name.
Ed Whitmore.
Oh, Ed Whitmore seconds it. Any discussion? No discussion. Let's call for a vote. Let's go by name. You say your name and say yay or nay.
Ed Whitmore, yay.
John Marler, yay. Travis?
Yes.
Kayla?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, now that's approved. We move on to item C, the public hearing and possible action and zoning. We're going to turn this over to Ethan Harwell, I believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the item you have before you tonight is a request for a zoning variance. Let me get my screen set up here. I believe the last time we met back in August, we were also considering a zoning variance. This project is going to be called the Grove Multifamily. The applicant is here, so we can ask some questions of them later. Oh, excuse me. So tonight what this applicant is requesting is a 15-foot variance from the 30-foot minimum setback that is required when a residential district, when development occurs in the MF2 district next to another residential district. We'll get more into that, what exactly that means later on the meeting. But there are three things I want to point out just kind of procedurally before we move on. This is a public hearing. So after the staff speaks and we give the applicant a chance to speak, we do need to consider public hearing. There are some public comments that Myrna has passed on to y'all earlier today. Two additional from when we posted on Friday, two that were received today. When we consider a zoning variance, it requires a supermajority of the board or 3/4 majority to approve the request. If a motion is made to approve, 3/4 of the voting members tonight, there are 5 of you, so there would require 4. 4 must vote to approve the request. If, say, we require 4 and we only get 3 votes in favor of a motion to approve, then that request fails and the request is denied. If the motion is to deny the request, you do not have to have the supermajority vote. You only have to have the simple majority. And lastly, when we consider a zoning variance, there are 8 criteria that we have to work through. And because this body is a quasi-judicial body, you have to state your findings and your reasonings behind the motion whenever you make your motion. So at the end of the presentation, I do have a summary slide. So as you craft your motion, just as you think about what motion you might be requesting tonight, and be thinking of these criteria as I go through the presentation. Awesome. The property we're considering tonight is located on the Northwest Boulevard, just south of its intersection with Lakeway Drive. Around it, you can see, you may be familiar with the GISD campuses, Frost Elementary, and the middle school whose name starts with a B, I cannot remember, the old administration building. There are a new set of townhomes there off Birch Oak Lane and Lakeway Drive. The Georgetown Airport is back to the northeast. Most of the area around this property is developed with a moderate density multifamily type use. You see condominium townhomes, you see duplexes, you see some apartment complexes. So this area is really a transition as we move from the single family neighborhood to the south up towards Lakeway Drive, which is a larger road. You do not see any single family homes directly adjacent to this property. The property falls within our Williams Drive sub-area plan and has a designation of high density mixed housing. The properties around it then provide for a transition away from that area. High density mixed housing in this instance really focuses on providing housing in a more urban context, staying away from your traditional single family home and into different types of housing like townhomes or apartment style homes. Like I mentioned, the property is currently zoned high density multifamily. This does not allow the developer to do any detached multifamily like a condominium regime like we often see through Georgetown now, but allows them to do any type of dwelling unit that is attached. These can be attached townhomes or apartments. Interesting enough, you'll see the red line I've placed on the map, and that's what we'll be focusing here in a few minutes. The townhomes and the duplexes just on their side have a non-conforming zoning. That just means that the use, the way the property is being used right now is not permitted within the zoning district that it currently has. Typically in this part of town, we see these situations come up whenever a property received a zoning back in the 70s or 80s, even early 90s, and we adopted our new zoning code in 2003. Sometimes the way the old zoning districts were set up just did not translate well into our new ones. So while if you'll see my cursor, the 2 properties here at the corner of Whisper Oaks and the Northwest Boulevard are zoned multifamily. They're used as duplexes, which would typically not be permitted in that district today. Then if we move 1 block over, these 4 groupings of homes you see here on the map are the Whisper Creek condominiums. These are a townhome style product. These would be permitted in the MF2 district, but they would not be permitted in the residential single family district today. So over time, as we've adopted new zoning codes and properties have developed, you've ended up with just an interesting situation here where what you see on this beautifully colored map does not actually match what's on the ground. And in general, that is okay. There are no issues with that until properties next door start to develop. The property we're looking at today is approximately 2.3 acres in size. About 29%, I believe, of the property is encroached by the 100-year floodplain. This property was originally platted in the early 90s and has sat undeveloped since. It's likely that this is one of those reasons. I have a better map of the floodplain here later. The development the applicant is proposing to you tonight sits on this 2.3 acre site, and they propose about 24 townhomes, very similar to the townhomes that you saw right there along that red line. The applicant does plan to sell them as condominiums. This property was platted in '84, has been undeveloped since, and interestingly enough, looking back at records, this property was annexed and zoned to the city limits after it was platted. Typically, you annex and zone property before it's platted. They had some different ideas back then. And the major feature the applicant is working around here on the property is this, 2/3 of an acre of floodplain, which accounts for about 1/3 of their site. So as you saw on the map, the properties to the south are zoned residential single family and high density multifamily. Our UDC includes a provision that was adopted within the last few years that states that whenever a property in the high density multifamily zoning district, like this property is, developed next to a residential district, the side setback should increase to 30 feet instead of 15 feet. So if this property, we define residential district as being any of the districts listed there at the bottom of your screen, which includes the residential single family district or the high density multifamily district. If this property were adjacent to a commercial property, it would not have to have a 30-foot setback, it would have to have a 15-foot setback. The intent of this section of the code is not necessarily to have like development increase in buffer to like development. Setbacks are meant to help mitigate the impact when two different uses are adjacent to each other. If you have a commercial property or a store behind a single family home, increasing the distance between the commercial building and the residential property line can help reduce light pollution and noise and impact on that residential property. Here, what we see on the concept plan, is two like products next to two like products. These townhomes will be a more dense, moderate density product next to that condominium regime townhome product there on the south side of the line, as well as that duplex product. So tonight the applicant is requesting that you reduce this required 30-foot side setback down to a 15-foot side setback. This will not only help them, to them not only makes sense because of the likeness of the two uses on each of these properties, townhomes and townhomes and townhomes and duplexes, but it also helps them accommodate site constraints that come from having so much floodplain on the property. They have specific requirements for way fire trucks have to move around the site, as well as some building separation requirements, and parking requirements. And so they are tight for space. One of the reasons they're tight for space is because that 100-year floodplain area is part of our water quality and stream buffer, where we do not allow construction of any improvements except for maybe walking trails, trash cans, and some fencing like they'll put in their dog park you see on the screen. There are 8 approval criteria that the zoning board has to consider to be able to approve this variance. The first one is extraordinary conditions. Is there anything unique about this property that would, if we strictly applied the code in its word for word meaning, would prevent the property from being used reasonably? In this case, reviewing the applicant's request, we find that there is, when you take into account the amount of floodplain that's on the property, approximately 29% of the property is encumbered by the floodplain, and requiring this larger setback here can further encumber the property in the usable space. If we were able to reduce that, that alleviates some of the space constraints on this property owner and would allow them to develop the property. The second criteria is called no substantial detriment. This really gets at, if we approve this variance from the code, from our typical rules regarding development, will there be any harm done to adjacent property owners? Are we endangering that public health, safety, and welfare we speak so often of? And in this case, staff found that there really was not any substantial detriment. There's always, it's always expected that there is, some nuisance developed whenever two properties develop next to each other. That's unavoidable sometimes. And here, with the likeness of the two uses, we did not find that this poses any grave danger or harm to the adjacent properties. We did receive some comments from neighbors about flooding there in the past, and our standard UDC requirements and the way our engineers review the plans when they come in will ensure that that is not increased, that flooding issue is not overwhelmed. The third requirement is other property. Does the same condition apply to other property in the vicinity? When we look at that zoning map, we find that this is the only property here in this general area that shares this kind of boundary and has these kinds of space constraints. No one else, no other, residential property shares a boundary with another residential property that would require the larger setback and have this amount of floodplain encumbrance. Number four, the fourth criteria is about the applicant's actions. Did the applicant construct something that was not permitted correctly the first time and now they're asking for forgiveness? Or over the years, has the applicant done something to the property that puts them in a position to request this variance? In this case, they're not. As I mentioned before, this property was developed in 1984, and that this zoning, non-conforming zoning has just occurred over time as the properties have been rezoned and developed and the city's adopted new ordinances. And this is not the fault of the applicant. Fifth requirement is compliance with our comprehensive plan. When we look at that Williams Drive study, the call for this to be a high density residential area, we find that the concept plan the applicant proposes is very consistent with that. It provides the moderate density residential that the comp plan really aims to provide there in a very walkable fashion in an infill location that has sat vacant for many years. Many of our comprehensive plan policies are related to going back into these sites that are vacant or need to be redeveloped and making that investment there. Our sixth requirement is about utilization. Would enforcing this requirement unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property? In general, we find yes. When you combine this with our other requirements regarding setbacks and tree preservation, especially that floodplain, the argument can definitely be made that this unreasonably restricts the utilization of the property, because the intent of this requirement is to not necessarily have townhomes with increased setbacks to townhomes. The last, I apologize, there are 7, not 8 criteria we have to go through today regarding insufficient findings. There are 4 things listed on your screen that the applicant cannot use as a basis for this request. These include that the property cannot be used for its highest and best use. Property owners are not entitled to the highest and best use, they're entitled to a reasonable use. And we cannot use finances as a reason for the variance. We're to judge this strictly on the merits of the development. So in general, staff found that this complied with all 7 of our approval criteria. We did send out 74 letters to property owners within the 300-foot buffer, as is our standard practice. Signs were posted on the property, and we had the ad in the Williamson County Sun on January 3rd. And we did receive 2 comments in favor of the request and 2 comments opposed to the request, which you had in your packet. Those 2 comments opposed were regarding their concerns regarding lighting and traffic, and then the flooding. And those came from folks living in those townhomes right behind there. So in summary, this is a public hearing and possible action on a zoning variance from the minimum setback requirements of the UDC section 6.02090A to allow 15-foot variance from the 30-foot minimum setback required when the high-density multifamily zoning district is adjacent to a residential zoning district to create a 15-foot minimum setback for this property located at 3105 Northwest Boulevard. I am here if you have any questions, as well as the applicant.
Okay.
And then we can have a small presentation.
Would you go back to the list of the 7 items?
Mhm.
Just the list, not the, yeah, that one. That one. Okay. Board members, if you would identify yourself, if you have a comment or a question, or if you'd like to talk to the petitioner, please identify yourself by name and then ask your question.
This is Kayla McCord. I do have a question for Ethan.
Yes, ma'am.
You had indicated that the engineer would determine that there is no concerns about the project redirecting water onto adjacent property. In other words, addressing any flooding concerns. Is that correct? I think that's what you said.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is that part of the site plan review?
Yes, ma'am, it is. So they've actually already gone through 2 rounds of site plan review, and they have had comments issued on their grading and drainage plan, which is where engineers would look for that. I believe the applicant's engineer is here and may have some more information to share with you on that than I do tonight. That's definitely something that David Monk and Louis Salione look for whenever they review site plans.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd like some reassurance there. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
Ed Whitmore, I think the only issue seems to be the possibility of floodwaters, and so we'd like to hear that.
Well, that's what we were just talking about, Ed. Ethan went over that the comments by the 2 people who were objecting were stating that they feared the runoff being a detriment. And Ethan, I believe I heard you say that the engineer states that that has been taken care of from the design. Is that correct, Ethan?
I don't believe they've reached a final conclusion on the design yet, but our engineers and their engineer are certainly aware of it and they're working on it.
And so it's still in question, or it's not in question? It's a resolved issue, or it's still open that somebody could be hurt by this water runoff?
So they have gone through 2 rounds of review on their permit. And so their permit has not been finalized, but the issue of grading and drainage has been brought up. And they're working on it.
In our presentation, it's my understanding that we can present an approval of this with the condition that those issues of runoff would be resolved. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You can impose conditions on your approval.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, any other comments from our members of the ZBA? No more questions. Okay, then anyone want to, okay, nobody's asking any questions. Somebody want to make the motion? Now you do. That's why I wanted this 7 up here. You have to go through each and every one of them stating that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Chairman, if I may, the applicant is here. If y'all have any questions of the applicant, And they may, I believe they also have a small presentation they'd like to give, if you're open to that.
Oh, anyone object on the board to a presentation from the petitioner? No, go ahead, have the petitioner give his presentation.
Great. Thank you, John. This is Benjamin Green. I'm the civil engineer on the project, and I'm with Kimley Horn. Very hard to follow the presentation that Ethan gave. Ethan, great job in presenting all the facts for the site, so I appreciate you doing such a good job on that. Sounds like the biggest concern with this revolves around drainage and how that affects any adjacent properties. Ethan brought up a few times that, about 30% of the sites inundated with floodplain. That has proved detrimental to most of the site, but the one good thing about it is all the water from our site actually drains directly into the creek or the floodplain. So there's actually no adverse impact to any of the adjacent sites from direct runoff. And then the other second component that others may be concerned with is an increase of volume of that actual floodplain, which again could potentially back up or affect neighboring properties. And so there's a few conditions that we have to meet within our site plan designs. We have to limit proposed runoff to at or less than the existing runoff. So that's what we've been going through with the city engineers. And I actually think we have cleared all drainage comments at this point through our second review. But we are definitely happy if you guys would like to place a condition on the variance for full drainage approval. I think that's a fair compromise. And then the second component is this is a FEMA floodplain. So we actually cannot increase the elevation of the FEMA floodplain without going through federal permits, which we're not seeking. So again, I think that would give everyone confidence that the creek will not be affected or changed from its existing condition.
Comments from anyone on the ZBA, please?
Yeah, this is Kayla McCord. So this drains from west to east, is that correct?
Hey, Kayla. Yes, for the most part, kind of southwest to northeast, I guess.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from ZBA? Okay, is there someone ready to take on the task? Oh, Ethan, would you put the list back on?
Yes, sir. And just a reminder, this is also a public hearing. So if we have any, need to open that.
Give me the recap. There. Okay, anyone willing to take on the task of doing the motion?
Can
Mr.
we?
Chairman, we need to open the public hearing before you consider a motion.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to, I'd like to go on record as being against changing the variance, and I'm Cornelia Ford.
Ms. Suarez, the rules for, Mr. Chairman, could you explain the rules for the public hearing?
Yeah, the rules are that you have 3 minutes to speak. We will start the timer on you when you begin speaking. You cannot ask questions of the board, and you cannot ask questions of anyone. You can make your comments, and that's what the purpose of the public meeting is. Thank you for coming, Ms. Soares. I appreciate this. We rarely see people in the group, in the community from here, and we thank you for coming, and we look forward to your comments. Okay, Connie.
Ms. Suarez, could you please state your name and your address for the record as well?
Cornelia Suarez. I own the property 3001 Whisper Oaks, which is on the corner of the adjoining the project. And I just want to go on record as being against changing the variance.
Do you have a basis for that?
Yes. Just having the increase in the traffic and density. And also I am concerned about the water.
All right, that's all. Ms. Soares, is that all you need to say?
That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Any other people wanting to speak on this item? Myrna, do we have anybody else? Okay,
Anyone?
Sophia, you said?
Chair, I do not see any hands raised
Okay.
or requests in the chat. We do have 2 people in the attendees, but they do not appear to be unmuting themselves for public comment at this moment.
Oh, okay. So at this point, we'll close the public hearing and we are now ready to hear a motion on what to do with this petition, please.
This is Kayla McCord. Move to approve the requested variance based on compliance with all 7 conditions, including all 7 criteria, excuse me, including extraordinary conditions, that there be no substantial detriment, that other property would not be affected, and that this is not a result of applicant's actions, that it does not run counter to the comprehensive plan, that failure to approve it would result in unreasonable restriction of utilization, and that there are no insufficient findings involved. And I also would add to that motion that there be a condition that it is well established prior to full site plan approval that there be no redirection of floodwater or drainage water onto adjacent properties.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second.
This is Ed Whitmore. I'll second that.
Okay, Ed Whitmore seconds, and the discussion on the board. After she put that condition on there, I have no comments. Anyone else on the ZBA board wish to comment on the motion? No comments. I'm ready for a vote, starting with you, Ed. Vote yay or nay?
Yay.
John Marlar, yay. Travis?
Yes.
Kayla?
Yes.
And Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with a full majority, full complete board, and we are just about now through with the legislative agenda, and I will now entertain an motion to adjourn.
This is Ed Whitmore. I'll move that we adjourn.
And I'll second it. All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are through. Thank you, members. I appreciate your attendance, and I appreciate that we have more than a quorum. Appreciate it. Much fun.
Thank y'all. Hope to see y'all sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Same here, Ethan. I'm 100% behind.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time.